Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Donkey Projections. I'm Lucas, and unfortunately Eric can't make it today, so I'll be going solo. It's been a very long time since we made another video, but today I'll be going through our 2022 Senate election predictions. We have a lot of changes we made since last video, and we're going to start going through them now. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So if you recall in our last video a while back ago, we talked a lot about the environment and how the Republicans were looking like they were going to do very well because of a strong Republican red environment. Currently, things have slightly changed. Joe Biden's approval rating is still pretty low. I want to say it's like 30, high 30s, but it is currently slightly rising. Democrats have a lot of momentum on their side. They've passed a lot of recent bipartisan bills, such as the PACT Act, which helped with burn pits with veterans, and also the gun reform legislation. That was the first time in decades that the Senate passed major gun legislation, and then of course recently they passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a big part of the Democratic agenda. The other thing to note is the overturning of Roe v. Wade has mobilized a lot of more Democrats to be more politically active and potentially could result in more of those voters coming out, which again could swing the environment towards their favor. So as always, I'm going to quickly go through all of these safe states that don't need any discussion. Um, these are obviously the usual suspects. So you'll see a couple changes to our recent map because, first of all, a lot of primaries ended up happening. And unfortunately for Republicans, they've nominated a lot of not so great candidates that will reflect very clearly on the general election ballot. So I think I got down all of the safe ones that I didn't want to talk about. So I'll quickly go through the ones that I do want to discuss. With Iowa, Abby Finkenauer, the former Democratic representative, lost her primary. I forgot the name of the Democratic nominee there, but I don't think he's very strong, especially against Chuck Grassley, who is very well known, has served for many years, and almost always wins in a landslide. And plus, with Iowa shifting more and more to the right because of those rural voters, this is pretty confidently safe R. In Missouri, Republicans avoided a scare here. Eric Greitens, the former governor, lost the Republican primary. Instead, Eric Schmidt, the attorney general of the state, a much more quote unquote safer pick than Greitens, won because Greitens has a bunch of scandals against him. And as a result, we're also going to be rating this one as safe R. That should be it for all these safes. The other one is Alaska. They recently have enacted a ranked choice voting system where essentially voters will rank their choices of the best candidates that they want. It looks like Lisa Murkowski, the moderate senator, is going to be favored here. She's being challenged by Kelly Tshibaka, who is Trump endorsed, very far right candidate. But it does look like Lisa Murkowski will be able to pull out a win because of this process, because of the ranked choice voting. So we will put this one as likely for now. Illinois should be safe. So let's head now to the state of Colorado, where we have Michael Bennet, and Republicans actually voted another scare here with the victory of O'Dea over Ron Hank. Ron Hank was a very, very outspoken Trump supporter. He talked about election fraud, which did not happen. O'Dea here is more moderate, so Democrats will face a tougher challenge, but it shouldn't be too hard because Colorado is still a very deep blue state. Michael Bennet is a moderately popular senator. He should have no problem getting reelected there. The state of Ohio is interesting. Republicans nominated J.D. Vance, who was a pretty bad candidate. He is pretty decently far right, and he has not done the best job campaigning. And Tim Ryan is a very good candidate. He's running a very good campaign right now. He's appealing to workers, moderate voters, and actually a lot of polls do have Tim Ryan up. The thing to note, though, is that in many of the polls, he's not cracking above 46, 47%. The issue with that is a lot of the undecided voters in Ohio do end up breaking for conservative candidates such as Trump, which is what we saw in 2020. And as a result, we'll be keeping Ohio as likely R. But Tim Ryan is a candidate to watch because he could, if anyone, pull something off. But according to the data right now, it's not something that I'm comfortable making the prediction judgment right now. Heading now to the state of New Hampshire, this one could have been really bad for Democrats if Chris Sununu won. or rather ran. He did not run. It looks like Chuck Morse, the state Senate president, is going to become the nominee. I mean, he's not really that well known. And Jean Shaheen, or sorry, Maggie Hassan, it doesn't look like she'll have too much trouble getting reelected because there's not too much scandals going around her. Nevertheless, we're going to leave this one as lean D because of just the environment in general. That might slightly favor Republicans. From the looks of it right now, 538 currently has Democrats leading the generic ballot for the first time. I think that will end up coming down a little bit by election day. I would expect a R+0, R+1, R+2 environment. If that ends up being the case, Maggie Hassan should still win re-election in a lead margin. Heading now to the state of Pennsylvania. Actually, I'll save Pennsylvania for later. Wisconsin, we have Ron Johnson, who is, again, one of those very far right, not so great candidates running. The Democratic nominee looks like it's going to be Mandela Barnes, the progressive lieutenant governor, or it could be Sarah Godlewski, who is the current treasurer. It would be tough to see Ron Johnson lose in this environment, but he is coming under a lot of fire for his recent votes, especially for being such a hardliner Trump supporter in a purplish state. But given the environment, I think Ron Johnson will be favored to win, although not very favored to win. I think we're going with the lean for the state as well. Although Mandela Barnes, I don't think he would be the greatest candidate in this state. So we're going to leave that for now. Florida, I think I actually forgot about this. Marco Rubio is running against Val Demings here, the likely two presumptive nominees. Val Demings is a decently well-known figure. She was considered for vice president under Biden, but Marco Rubio does perform pretty strongly with Hispanic voters, especially in Miami-Dade. I believe he ran ahead of Trump by several percentage points, so I do think he's going to end up winning re-election here. The state of North Carolina is also an interesting one. Republicans also avoided a potential scare here. They nominated Ted Budd, who is probably the most generic Republican possible. He's a representative. He beat Pat McCrory, who is a very unpopular former governor. So it looks like even though Sherry Beasley is a decent candidate, she outran Biden by a point or two. It does look like Ted Budd will end up winning the seat here. And heading now to the state of Nevada. Nevada is very interesting. I personally do think that the Republican candidate here, who's looking like going to be the candidate, Adam Laxalt, is probably the best recruit that Republicans had all across the country, but honestly, I think he's a little bit overhyped. He ran for governor in 2018, lost to Steve Sisolak. He's not the greatest candidate, but he's probably the second best person the Nevada Republicans could have put up. The first being Brian Sandoval, who was a very popular moderate governor of the state. But in this current environment, I do think that Catherine Cortez Masto will hold on, but it will be very narrow. I've seen the polls, it looks very tight, but considering Nevada's demographics, their trends, I think Cortez Masto will hold on very narrowly in a tilt to lean or lean D margin. It'll be very close, but I think she will edge it out. 3 states left. All these will be very close matches. We're going to first start with Arizona. Recently, the Republicans and Democrats had their primary here. This is between Mark Kelly and Blake Masters. Blake Masters was known in the primary for being a very far right conservative, supporting Trump and saying all those things. Mark Brnovich was one of his main competitors. He was a much more moderate. Actually, I don't want to say moderate. He was a much less Trumpier candidate, but he lost pretty badly to Blake Masters. Funny enough, though, Blake Masters looks like he's going to be pivoting in the general election. I watched one of his recent ads where he describes himself as a true independent. Obviously, he's trying to go towards those moderate independent voters of Arizona because that makes up a very decent portion of Arizona. If you recall, Biden actually won over 10% of Republican voters in 2020. So it does look like Mark Kelly will end up winning here. I do think that the stuff that Blake Masters has said in the primary and has said in the past will damage him here, even if he's pivoting now. And I think Mark Kelly is a pretty decent candidate. I think this also goes in a tilt margin for Mark Kelly. And now to Georgia and Pennsylvania, two of the harder races to predict here. Pennsylvania, I'll start off with here. I gotta say, John Fetterman, I had his doubts about his campaign in the primary in the general election, but he's actually running a pretty good campaign. I believe he's gonna be able to campaign in person now because he's finished his stroke recovery. But he's done actually a pretty good job. I know a lot of people say he's overdoing it, but he's done a pretty good job tying Oz to New Jersey. A lot of his tweets, a lot of his memes, make people laugh about how Dr. Oz is really from New Jersey. He's really carpetbagging here to Pennsylvania. And I think that actually matters a lot to the Pennsylvanians. I don't think he's really described a lot of policy, but he has obviously described like generally Democratic policies, but he's done a very good job of saying that Oz is an outsider. He doesn't deserve to be elected in the state of Pennsylvania. He only moved here to run for Senate. And I don't think Oz has actually responded very well to that criticism. Oz has really not directly responded to it because to be completely unbiased here, it is kind of true that he did move to Pennsylvania and he lives in New Jersey. So it's right now, all the polls are pointing in Fetterman's direction. And unlike Tim Ryan, he's actually breaking 49-50% in some of those polls. And as a result, I do think that John Fetterman, as of now, would probably win this election in a tilt-deep margin. Of course, a lot can change. There'll be still debates to happen. In-person events could change things as well. But as of now, I do think Fetterman is favored to win. And actually, that actually marks it right now that Democrats have won 50 seats in the Senate. We do think that Democrats will hold the Senate as of now. And finally, the state of Georgia. Georgia is another one of those states where Republicans are running a weak Republican candidate, just like in Pennsylvania and Arizona. In Georgia, they're running Herschel Walker, a former NFL player, against Raphael Warnock. Warnock, as we remember, defeated Kelly Loeffler in 2020, actually technically 2021 runoffs, and he's also a decently popular candidate, I would say. On the other hand, Herschel Walker has said a lot of controversial things, not just about election fraud, but about things in general. Apparently, he also has some stuff with family matters and children, and it's not looking great on his side. And a lot of the polls actually are showing that Raphael Warnock is outrunning Stacey Abrams for governor by several percentage points. They're showing Brian Kemp winning, but Raphael Warnock still winning at the same time, even though there's a split ticket. So actually, a lot of people are thinking that there's going to be a big split between the Senate election and the governor election. And I actually do agree with them. I think that Raphael Warnock will end up winning the Senate election here, although very, very narrowly. I think there's enough enthusiasm on the Democratic side to come out for candidates and for him in this case because of Herschel Walker being a bad candidate. So this is our final prediction here. We have 51 seats for the Democrats and 49 seats for Republicans. Just keep in mind that this is still pretty early. We have a couple of months to go before the election, but this is what we were thinking is going to happen now. We'll be releasing later today hopefully a House election, a House election prediction, a governor election prediction, and maybe something related to current events. We'll try to see what we can do. We're going to try to record more over the summer. So if you like this episode, please hit like one. If you like our content, please subscribe. We'll see you in our next episode later today. See ya.